that move houses. My name is Kat Amato, and I'm the Sales and Marketing Director at Coggno. Each month we offer 2 free live webinar events, and I'm happy that you were able to attend today. Coggno offers online training on many topics, so be sure to check out our website at coggno.com. You can also email me directly with any training need you have, and I'll provide solutions for you. You can email me at info@coggno.com. Today's guest hosts are Ed Wolkis and Jackie Goldstein. Ed and Jackie have been working together and close friends for over 30 years. During her days as art director at Turner Broadcasting, owning a new media marketing company, and currently as a freelance creative director, Ed has been Jackie's go-to professional photographer of choice. He took photos that were used in ad campaigns Jackie created for CNN, Headline News, TBS, the Braves, the Hawks, all Turner properties. Ed has done work for other national accounts, including the Home Depot, DuPont, Owens Corning, Delta, Coca-Cola, and General Electric. His work has been in the New York Times, USA Today, Newsweek, and National Geographic. Jackie continues to use Ed's talents when she needs stunning commercial photography. They've both won national and international awards in their fields, some for work they've done together. Several years ago, Ed wrote the book, How to Take Photos That Move Houses, and Jackie helped him through the process. And when Ed wanted to turn it into an online course, he asked Jackie to partner with him and help convert the book into a new user-friendly online course that includes videos and interactive sessions. It took them just about 2 years to do, and they're still friends even after that endeavor. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ed and Jackie now, who have joined us for this webinar. Thank you, Ed and Jackie.
Thanks, Kat. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We're all familiar with how important first impressions are and how quickly we make observations and make decisions. Now, when you add the internet, where 9 out of 10 people start their home search with instant access to available properties, first impressions mean everything.
Hold on 1 second, Ed. For some reason, there we go. Now we're okay.
Okay. Well, that's actually where the idea for my book came from. 10 years ago, I was in the market for a new home. I saw a lot of photos, but I was having a rough time finding a house I wanted to look at because the photos were so bad. Here are some photos similar to what I was looking at the time.
Okay. If we're hearing some feedback from some people, so if people who are participating, who are watching the webinar, if you could just mute your phones, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. Some interesting shots here, huh? So anyway, there were no great images that made me want to consider any of the options. I clicked right past a lot of homes. Who knows, maybe a great house was in there somewhere, but the images just didn't show that. Eventually, I found a great house, and yes, it did have a great photo in the listing. Coincidentally, I was starting to do a lot of architectural photography, and I found that I really enjoyed it. It gave me a real appreciation for my new subjects. I traded in human models for model homes, and my photography studio for a bunch of different locations. I've been able to shoot some pretty amazing homes. It's been a lot of fun. Jackie?
Photos tell stories. Ed and I are passionate about creating the images that tell stories and motivate consumers. We're not real estate agents. We're visual marketers. We know the power of images in inspiring and capturing customers. And yeah, it really does help when you have a beautiful home like this to shoot. But believe me, a bad photo can make even the most beautiful property unappealing. It's not the home, it's the photo. We know that buying a home combines the practical with the emotional. Good photos can tap into positive emotions. They're the links that connect our eyes to our minds and to our hearts. Engage buyers who can visualize themselves in the photo, view those properties, buy those houses, and pay more for them. So today we're going to talk about the importance of great images to help you and your business, show you some sample photos, and teach you some valuable things that will immediately help you take better photos. There are three benefits of better images to you, the real estate professional. First of all, easier, faster, bigger sales. I'm sure you can all understand and appreciate that. Making the experience of finding the right home easier is way more enjoyable, resulting in happier clients, lots more likes. And better photos show buyers and sellers that you care, that you really do want to sell homes, that you respect the home and you respect them. And they spread the word. That leads to more referrals and your better brand.
I spent 2 years writing the book, How to Take Photos That Move Houses. And together, Jackie and I spent over 2 years creating the online course for real estate pros who see the value in better images and want to move more houses. Ever since we've created the course, we've noticed that most people are really initially interested in the equipment. We know that it can be intimidating. Selecting the right equipment may even be what's kept you from taking your old listing shots or learning how to take better ones. The terminology might seem foreign and the cost might seem very high. But good tools are as critical to good images as the right tools are to builders, chefs, and artists. That's why we spend a lot of time in the course explaining how to select and how to use the best equipment for you. Not because we're equipment junkies, but your camera, your lens, and your tripod are critical tools in helping you create better images. So before we start, let's get it out in the open. Never take listing photos with your cell phone, and later we'll show you why. Here's why better equipment matters. You get better image quality, you've got an easier workflow, and you get quicker results. So let's start with the essentials. Here are mine, but you won't need all of this. I used to bring a load of lighting equipment with me every time I went out on a location shoot. But with digital, it's just not as necessary. Usually what I bring now is I just have a flash on hand in case I need it. Okay, I still bring some lighting equipment with me just to keep in the car because I'm basically insecure. But aside from that, I don't ever use it. You really need only 3 things: a camera, a wide-angle lens, and a tripod. And just like most things in life, you get what you pay for. We believe you should buy the best equipment you can afford. So let's talk about your camera. Point and shoot versus DSLR. DSLR stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex. It's kind of like the film cameras that you used to see, the Nikons, the Canons. Looks just like that, works very similar. So a point and shoot camera can take some pretty decent photos, but it isn't really good for interior photography. One of the main reasons is that the lens on a point and shoot, in most cases, is not wide angle enough to get a photo of an entire room. The quality of the photos taken by a point and shoot camera in general is not as good as the photos you can take with a DSLR. You can change the lenses on a DSLR, and because it has a larger sensor, which is the electronic chip that takes the place of the film, the image quality is good. A more expensive professional quality DSLR will have a larger sensor than a less expensive DSLR. This larger sensor produces the best images that you can take with a DSLR. It also allows your wide-angle lens to be even more wide-angle than with a cheaper DSLR. The downside to this type of camera is that it costs more. It's about $2,500 to start, and that's without even having a lens on it. Is it really necessary? Well, you can do real well with just a less expensive DSLR. And once you're comfortable with it, you can decide if you want to move up. Here are some interesting statistics about shooting listings with a DSLR. Jackie, why don't you read that?
Sure. At closing, listings with professional photos gain anywhere between $934 and $116,076 as measured by the difference between asking and final price over listings using photos from point-and-click cameras. That's from the Wall Street Journal. And this one, home shot with a DSLR camera, Well, they receive an average of 61% more views than their peers across all price tiers. They have a 47% higher asking price per square foot, and they have an increased likelihood of selling for homes priced above $300,000.
So if you're not using photos taken with a DSLR, you're leaving money on the table. Let's talk about your wide-angle lens. Lenses are classified as wide-angle, normal, and telephoto. For interior photography, you'll want to have a good wide-angle lens. This lets you get more of the room in the photo and tends to make a room look bigger. You may have also heard the term zoom. A zoom lens is more versatile and lets you zoom in closer or zoom out for a more wide-angle look. My 3 rules of real estate photography: tripod, tripod, tripod. This may be the best and most important photography tip you'll get. All interior photography should be done with your camera on a tripod. Your images will be sharper because your camera is perfectly stabilized. A tripod eliminates accidental camera movement and blur. You have more options with your camera settings because when your camera is stabilized, you can shoot at slower speeds and smaller f-stops, giving greater depth of field. We'll explain that a little bit later too. And your photos will have better composition because when your hands are free from holding the camera, you can set up the shot exactly the way you want it. And if you have to move a chair or straighten a pillow, the camera will be in exactly the same place when you get back. All exterior photography should be done on a tripod as well. You might think that because there's so much more light outside, you'd be able to get by without a tripod. However, I would still strongly recommend using a tripod whenever you can. It gives you so much more control. The first thing you should also know about your camera is how to work all the settings. You can set your camera on the automatic green mode and sometimes get pretty decent results. But to get consistently good photos, you need to understand what the different controls do and how and when to use them. These 3 camera terms are crucial in photography. Once you become comfortable with them, you'll be the master of your camera. In the course, we will explain how these work and how to make them work together. The f-stop, otherwise known as the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO all work together to give you a properly exposed photo. The f-stop controls what's called depth of field, which means what part and how much of the photo will be in focus. Here's the effect of the f-stop. Go back and forth. Okay. Note that when the opening is smaller, more is in focus. Kind of like when you squint. People, especially if you wear glasses, when you squint, things come into focus more. And when the opening in the lens is wider, the depth of field is shallower or shorter. Want to do that one more time?
Sure.
Okay. I happen to like this screen. Okay, so you see the difference, how the flowers are sharp in both, but the background goes out of focus when you open up the lens. Good. Okay, so now let's talk about the shutter speed. The shutter speed controls motion blur, either from the camera moving or from your subject moving. Tripods are especially critical in situations where you've got a slow shutter speed, low light, or lots of unwanted movement because they stabilize the camera. So here's a demonstration of different shutter speeds. In this first screen, the faster shutter speed freezes time and the cars look like they're standing still. They're actually all moving. A slow shutter speed makes the cars look blurry. And by using a really slow shutter speed, we can make the cars disappear. This is an old trick that architectural photographers used to use. They couldn't stop all the cars from being on the road at the time.
Yeah, now you can.
Now you can, right.
Okay.
The ISO controls how sensitive the camera's sensor is to light and gives you more control of how your camera reacts to light. It's really helpful since you might be shooting on bright days, at night, on cloudy days, in a darker home, or homes with natural light. Once you know how to use the tools, you can concentrate on the subject, the listing property. Okay, let's talk about composition and the rule of thirds. Putting the most important part of the photo about a third of the way into the image, either from the top, the bottom, or the sides, is a good place to start. In other words, do your best to not center the best or brightest feature. It's all flexible. It all comes down to what looks best, but this is a great place to start. As you gain experience, you'll find times when you can break the rules. Jackie?
Sure. A well-designed image invites you in. This is really important. It invites you in. It leads your eye through the image. It allows you to move through the image and imagine yourself there. So when you're shooting a space, walk around the room and see what the best angles are. Set the furniture so that it provides your visual entrance, and use the rule of thirds.
You'll also need to consider lighting, how to use it, the difference between different lighting sources, the best times of day to do exterior shots, and playing with lighting. Here's an important tip about exterior lighting. The best times of day to shoot are in the morning or late afternoon. The hour before sunset and the hour after sunrise is sometimes called the magic hour because the color of the light is warmer and the angle of the light is more flattering to both people and houses. Of course, depending on how the house is situated, you may or may not be able to take advantage of this nice light. So this first photo here shows what the first shot was taken in the morning, second shot was in the late afternoon. Just the time of day can make that much of a difference in the photo. Be aware of the direction of the light. If the house is facing east, it might be better to photograph it in the morning. If it faces west, it may look best in the evening. If it faces south, it will have sunlight most of the day. And if it faces north, it may never have any sunlight hitting it, so it may be best to shoot on an overcast day to avoid having the house in silhouette. So here's another great example of the difference. This was shot at the wrong time of the day, this particular photo here. This was shot early in the morning. Let's show the other shot. And this was shot by waiting till about 6:30 in the evening. So you can see what a difference just a few hours makes. It's always best to scout it out beforehand. You can always use Google Maps to see an aerial view of the house to help you plan the best time of the day to shoot. Once you know what you're doing, you will take better photos. But if you want to take your photos to the next level, you may want to consider a program like Photoshop. It can be pretty involved, and while becoming proficient at Photoshop is a whole other course, we do provide an intro and a demonstration in our course to help you get your feet wet. Photoshop is great for straightening vertical lines, correcting color, correcting exposure, and more advanced techniques like combining images with different exposures, which is great. Like, say, for instance, you shoot an interior and the windows are too bright. You can shoot different exposures, have the windows properly exposed in one photo, and combine it all together. But that's down the road, and it's not something you need to worry about right now. In the course, we also talk about other issues like display. Where will your image be used? Will you need to use it in print as well as online? Copyright and ownership issues. Who owns the image and how can it legally be used? And if you're still a little timid, or you have a project with a bigger budget, we teach you how to work with a professional photographer, how to speak their language. You'll find that once you know what to look for as far as image quality, composition, and lighting, etc., you'll be a much better consumer of professionally shot photography. Okay, we said that we would tell you why you should never use your cell phone for your listing photos. Here's why. Jackie, you want to explain some of this?
Oh, man. Well, yeah, because I think this is a really powerful display because in all of these 4 shots, Ed is actually standing in the same position. The only thing that's different is the kind of camera he's using and lens that he's using. So you can see on the top 2 photos, he's using a point and shoot, one with a built-in flash and one with no flash. So you can automatically tell. And then the lower left hand is with your cell phone camera. So those 3 images really crop out a lot of information, a lot of the story of this room. So that makes the room look really tight and cramped and small. When in fact the lower right-hand corner is with the one that's taken with a DSLR with a wide-angle lens. That even gives you the ceiling with that beautiful chandelier. It gives you both the windows, those two beautiful French doors. It makes the room look so much bigger. It opens up the whole space, and now suddenly it's not a cramped little dining room that only seats 8 people. It's a room that sits 8 people comfortable with a lot of people walking around. It's a big space, and those other 2 photos just don't show it. And the only difference here, I think it's really a powerful demonstration because the only difference here is the camera and the lens.
Right, I was basically standing in the same place when I shot all of these pictures. Very good. Okay, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and in your case, maybe thousands of dollars. So why wouldn't you want to take the best ones possible? This comparison really brings to light the difference the right equipment makes. You've even had agents confess that they've taken drive-by exterior listing shots, photos they've taken with their cell phones from their car, and that when they saw the difference better photos made and the response from potential buyers, they were converts to taking better photos. So where do you start? First of all, you need to learn how to use your camera. Play with composition. We recommend that you practice at home, with your home. Experiment with different angles, move yourself around, and decide where to position your tripod. Find the best place to shoot from and see the effect it has on the composition. And unlike in the old days when we shot on film, photography could get pretty expensive back then because each shot costs money in film, developing, and printing. With digital, we don't have those costs. So don't be afraid to shoot a lot of pictures. Go ahead and play with it. Have fun. Learning any new skill is awkward at first, but the more familiar you are with your equipment, and the more you train your eye to evaluate the space, the better your photos will be. Once you start to see a little improvement, you'll be hooked. It's never too late to learn how to shoot great photos, and it really doesn't take long to see improvement. So where do you go to learn about how to take photos and move houses?
Funny you should ask, Ed, because we just haven't have a course for that. 3 things about Photos That Move Houses online course is that 1, it's really easy to understand. We've designed this course so that the content is for anybody with any level experience. And 2, we've got lots of examples, just like the photos that you've seen in this webinar. We've got lots of real estate photos, we've got videos, we've got interactive segments, and we've got helpful quizzes. And 3, it's online and self-paced. So you can learn something, learn a technique, grab your camera, and start practicing at your own pace, and come back and learn something new. And we've even got, for the people who are online now, a special webinar price, which is available through May 7th, where you'll get 30% off the price. And we're going to send you the, just look in your inbox following the webinar, shortly following the webinar, and we'll send you the link and the coupon code for the discount. Ed and I are also available to do hands-on workshops for your agencies or groups. So if you've got a lot of people in your office that are interested in taking the course and want to learn more with a hands-on workshop, contact us if you're interested in that.
Okay, and let's go ahead and open the lines for Q&A.
So I guess, Kat, if...
Okay, you want me to go ahead and unmute all the lines, or do you want to use the chat feature?
Let's use the chat.
Let's use the chat.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions for Ed and Jackie, you can input those in the chat feature on the right-hand side of your screen in the GoToMeeting session, or panel, rather. Okay, I've got one question here. Allison wants to know, what camera should I buy? What camera do you use?
Okay, I use a Canon 5D. And the reason I use it is because it does have that larger sensor. It's a very high quality camera. And, it's been working really well for me for many years. If you don't have that kind of a budget, you can start off with something like a Canon Rebel
What kind of budget are you talking about, Ed?
Okay, on my camera, like I said, it costs about $2,500 just for the body. You can buy a Canon Rebel, including a lens or two, for about $600. You can even go to places like Costco and maybe even Amazon to look for that. But Canon Rebel has several different models, and I would recommend that as a good starting camera if you don't want to spend the additional money.
All right, excellent. Okay, we have another question from Paula. Do you ever use a pole to raise your camera up to a higher vantage point?
That's a great question. I've never used a pole, personally. I have stood on ladders. I stood on top of my car. But I've never used a pole. I don't know if it would work with my camera. It's a good point. I've never even thought of that. But bottom line is whatever works. If you can figure out a way to make that work for you, then that's great.
I think that you would have a real issue with stability, though. If
I would think
your camera's
so.
on a pole and you're trying to take a photo, how do you stabilize
to stabilize the pole somehow, and probably have some kind of a remote where you can see the image on an iPad or on a laptop in order to be able to see what you're doing. It's an interesting concept. I'll have to look into that.
It's an interesting concept, and I kind of wonder what kind of photo requires that kind of a shot.
Yeah. Well, I guess sometimes you don't want to be looking up at a house, but one of the nice things is, one of the reasons you don't want to be looking up at a house or a building is because it's hard to keep the lines straight, the vertical lines. When you're taking architectural photos, the tradition has been to always keep the vertical lines straight. Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, when you look up or down, it makes the vertical lines converge. If you can keep the camera perfectly level, then your vertical lines will be straight. But nowadays, you can correct that in Photoshop. The way photographers used to do that is by using what's called a view camera. It had all kinds of adjustments for doing that. But nowadays, Photoshop is the way most people handle that. Good question.
And
okay, thanks, Paula.
And let me just make a comment, because when you're looking at, start to look, Ed was talking about these converging lines. When you're looking at photos, I think try to be a little bit sensitive about when you're looking at them, if the sides of the room look like they're caving in, if they're at an angle.
Right.
And if they're on an angle and doing all kinds of wonky things that your eye doesn't see because your eye is seeing it straight, if they're converging like that, you know that somebody's not really taking care and doing the best photos that they can.
Exactly.
And I think that makes some kind of a subliminal message to people when they're seeing photos that are kind of subpar, where you're not taking the care.
Right, exactly. That's one of the easiest clues to tell if a photo was taken by a professional or an amateur, those vertical lines.
Okay, great. Kevin also has a question. For interiors, flash, ambient, or combination?
Okay, I use available light whenever it's possible. And that's probably 95% of the time. The times when you might need to use a flash are, for instance, if you have direct sunlight coming in through the windows, if it's very bright outside, and you want to get some kind of a balance. If you do use a flash, the thing to do is not make it look like you've used a flash, because it's kind of a harsh, stark look to the photo. The way to handle that, if you can, is to take the flash and bounce it off the ceiling. That softens the light. It makes it come from above, which is the natural place light we're used to seeing come from above, because that's where the sun is. So, but I would, it's a good thing to experiment with, again, if the windows are exceptionally bright and you can't get the right balance. A good idea is to bounce a flash off the ceiling.
Okay, great. We have another question from Debbie. Debbie's asking if you have any tips for taking photos of banquet rooms.
Of what?
Empty rooms? Vacant rooms?
Oh, vacant rooms. I thought you said banquet rooms.
Sorry. I'm a little cold, so sorry.
Well, we got pollen here, so I can associate with that. Vacant. The basic thing when you're shooting a vacant room is to just try to get as much of the architecture in there as you can. Vacant rooms can be really challenging because there's not as much visual interest in there. What you don't want to do is be shooting with a lens that's not wide enough, because then what you're going to end up with is a picture of a wall, and that's not going to sell anything. So back up, use a wide-angle lens, get as much in there as you can, keep the vertical lines straight, keep the light balanced, and that's pretty much what I would recommend.
All right, great. Allison is asking if you can highlight more on maybe the trade-off of investing in camera, courses, and education investments versus building a strong partnership with a pro real estate photographer.
Well, if you happen to have a pro real estate photographer that you can hang around with, are you saying in other words, whether to teach you or somebody to hire to do the work? Or okay, I'll address both since I can communicate with
Allison,
them.
if you want to provide the answer to that, Allison, in the chat field.
Well, let me just say that if you've got a professional photographer who's willing to have you tag along and learn from them, by all means, do it. It's a great way to learn. I learned a lot of what I know from apprenticing with other photographers. If you're talking about having a professional photographer who shoots all of your work for you, well, that's certainly an option. If you can afford to do that, and if that's what you want to do. But again, not every project is going to warrant having a pro shoot it for you, depending on the price of the listing house and just other factors like that. So if some people feel like they like to have the control of taking their own pictures, they want to learn the skill. I mean, learning photography is a lifelong skill. Once you learn how to do this, you can use the same knowledge for taking pictures of your kids and grandkids playing Little League Baseball and whatever else you want to do, creating art. You can do whatever you want. You just have to learn the basics. So either way, I think it's really important to learn about the basics of photography, whether you're dealing with a pro or whether you're shooting it yourself.
And I'm going to just add something. In the course we have a whole section on working with a pro, so that, for example, if you were to take the course and learn about photography and learn about the composition and some of these tips that we've even shared with you today, like the vertical lines and things to look out for and the lighting and the balance, you're going to be a much smarter consumer. And when you work with a professional photographer, you'll be able to better evaluate the photographs they're taking. Because I have seen professionally taken photographs that don't look professionally taken to me. The lines aren't perfectly vertical, or something's amiss. So composition might be off. Mm-hmm. So I think once you become a better educated person and understand photography, you're going to be a much better educated person working with a professional if you decide to go down that road. Otherwise, it really might be something that you are surprised and really enjoy doing, and you don't have to rely on a photographer's schedule. If you need to shoot photographs and you need to get out there and do it right away, you can go and do it at your time. You're not relying on a photographer to do a lot of the work for you. So, some people will never be persuaded to take their own listing photos. But I think even the course has something for them in how to work better with a professional photographer.
Right. Plus, it'll teach you how to communicate with a photographer. There are things that real estate agents are aware of that I'm not. And in order to communicate to the photographer how you want some things to show, especially in the much higher end properties, it's always good to know, how to express yourself with a photographer.
Okay, great. Paula is asking, which HDR program do you like? I sometimes use Photomatic. It's Photomatic or Photomatics, I forget. But either way, but you need to use it in combination with Photoshop as well. HDR, for those who don't know, it stands for High Dynamic Range. And what that means is you can take several photos
of, say, a room with bright windows, shoot a range of photos, and there are programs that will automatically combine these photos together and give you an image where the interior of the room looks right and the exterior, the outside of the house looks right as well. HDR has been used a lot, not just in real estate photography, but people have discovered it, and it's become kind of a look. And for people who are in the business and see it a lot, it seems that in many cases it's started to become way overused. But if you use it as a tool, it can be pretty valuable. What I'll sometimes do is in rare cases, I will go ahead and use HDR, and I'll take that image and use it just as a layer in my Photoshop when I'm working on the image in Photoshop. And that way I can just use parts of the image wherever I need it, and it's much more subtle than having what people now call that HDR look to it. So I hope that helps with that.
Okay, great. I do have one more question in queue, and that is Rob. He's asking, whenever I take photos inside of a house, the view of the windows goes to white. What am I doing wrong?
Okay, well, that's pretty much what we were just talking about here. What I will sometimes do, like we were just saying before, you can use HDR, and that can be very helpful in that case. When you're talking about light inside a room versus light outside a room, the light outside, according to my calculations, which could be right, could be wrong, but according to my calculations, there's about 1,000 times as much light out there as there is inside. So it's really hard to get that balance sometimes. The camera cannot see the same way our eyes do. Our eyes kind of accommodate to the inside and the outside, seems to us at the same time. Using HDR can help with that. What I tend to do more than use HDR is I do kind of my own version of HDR, but I do it manually. In other words, I will shoot the photo much darker than would be proper for exposing the inside, and that way get the windows to look good, so I have detail in the outside areas. Then I'll just combine that with a properly exposed photo of the interior, and I will manually mask it in Photoshop and combine the two images together. To me, that's the most effective way to do it in most cases. Oh, one more thing. When you're dealing with that, one other way is if you can brighten up the interior. By bouncing a flash off the ceiling like we were talking about earlier, that's another way to kind of equalize the inside and the outside light. So those are two ways of approaching the problem.
Okay, great. I don't have any more questions in queue at this time.
Thanks.
So if anyone has any other questions for Jackie and Ed before we conclude, please do enter those into the chat feature of your GoToMeeting sessions so that you can take advantage of getting some good help while we're on the webinar.
Great questions, though. Thank you.
Really good, yeah. Well, thanks again, Kat. We hope that you've all learned a few things that immediately help you start taking better photos. We'd like to thank you for attending, and good luck. If you do have any more questions, feel free to email us. We'd love to hear from you, and let us know how you like the course. Thanks again.
Okay, great. We actually have another question that popped in, so maybe we can answer this before we conclude. Paul is asking if you'll show the Photoshop steps in the future. Photoshop steps, yes, in the future.
Well, we do show some in the course. We touch on it. Again, it's not a Photoshop course because that would be a whole other course in itself. But right now we do show some just to give everybody a little bit of familiarity with it. And if anybody takes the course and they have specific questions about it, please feel free to email me, and I'll help you through whatever it is that you're trying to figure out. Okay.
And Ed, Jackie, do you feel that any previous photography experience is necessary to take the course, or if you have no experience, is it something people can grasp fairly easily?
Absolutely. We've designed the course so that you don't have to have any prior photography experience. If you've only been taking pictures with your cell phone or those little disposable cameras, you still can take this course. It's got a lot of basic information. And then we've also tagged some information that's a little bit more advanced so that people who are at a higher level of experience with photography, there's something in there for them too. But absolutely not. Don't feel intimidated at all that you need to have any experience at all to start the course.
Okay, great. And we have another question. Peter's asking or stating, you don't seem to talk about Lightroom. Any reason for that?
The only reason is because I don't use Lightroom. Lightroom is, in my opinion, much better for people who tend to shoot a lot of photos and need help with organizing and cataloging them and doing things like changing a bunch of photos at a time. In my work, especially with the higher-end homes, I tend to use Photoshop more. Photoshop, you can do much more localized corrections on images. You have a lot more control on the individual image with Photoshop. So to me, the kind of work that I do, Photoshop is much more useful. I just really haven't had the need to get into Lightroom that much.
Okay, great. Well, if anyone thinks of any other questions after the event, please do feel free to email Ed directly at ed@photosthatmovehouses.com. And additionally, be sure to check in your inbox for the email that Jackie will be sending out after the webinar with the 30% discount, and definitely take advantage of that before that expires midnight Thursday on May 7th. And also, I'd like to extend a very, very good offer for everyone as an appreciation for attending today's webinar. We have a free Training Simplified package available to each of you. It is valued at $2,500. It includes 10 free courses of your choice from a list that we'll provide to you. It also includes a free training platform that will be branded for you and ability to upload your own internal training directly into the training platform so you can distribute that to your staff. I'll be emailing everyone the details after the webinar so that you can all take advantage. And again, thank you, Ed and Jackie, so much for joining us today and conducting the webinar. It's had a lot of great information, and I'm sure everyone appreciates that very much.
Thank you, Kat.
So again, thank you so much, everyone, for attending today's webinar hosted by Coggno. Be sure to look out for future webinar opportunities and also to check out the available courses on Coggno.com. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.